Welcome to my channel Echoes of Coin. The 5-cent coin of the United States, widely recognized as the Jefferson nickel, carries a profound history that extends far beyond its small size and modest value. By 1964, this coin had become one of the most common pieces of American currency, but it also represented far more than a tool of commerce. On its face were words that embodied the nation's values, "In God We Trust" and "Liberty," and a portrait of Thomas Jefferson, one of the most influential figures in American history. On its reverse stood Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia home, an enduring symbol of architecture, democracy, and the vision of an independent republic. In 1964, at a time of social change, economic challenges, and rising demand for coinage, the Jefferson nickel assumed a central place in the daily life of millions of Americans. To understand this coin is to explore not just its metal and design, but the era in which it was struck, the meaning of its inscriptions, the minting process that produced billions of pieces, and the lasting value it holds for collectors and historians alike. The Jefferson nickel was introduced in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel, which had been in circulation since 1913. The United States Mint sought a new design to honor Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, author of the Declaration of Independence, and one of the nation's founding fathers. The competition to design the new coin attracted artists from across the country, and ultimately the design of Felix Schlag was chosen. Schlag's work placed Jefferson's profile on the obverse of the coin, facing left, with inscriptions including "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date of issue. The reverse featured Monticello, Jefferson's home, presented with classical balance and dignity. This design became iconic, and for decades it remained unchanged, providing Americans with a consistent reminder of Jefferson's role in shaping the nation. By 1964, the Jefferson nickel was an established part of American coinage. It circulated alongside the Lincoln cent, the Roosevelt dime, the Washington quarter, and the Franklin half-dollar, though in 1964 the half-dollar was replaced by the Kennedy half-dollar following the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The 1960s were a decade of extraordinary change, marked by the Civil Rights Movement, the Cold War, and the beginning of America's deeper involvement in Vietnam. Yet through all of this, the nickel remained an everyday constant, exchanged in shops, collected in banks, and carried in millions of pockets. It was worth only 5 cents, but its presence was universal. The inscriptions on the coin carried deep meaning. "In God We Trust" was first placed on United States coinage during the Civil War, reflecting the nation's search for divine support in a time of crisis. By the 20th century, it had become a standard motto, appearing on virtually all coins. Its placement on the Jefferson nickel reinforced the idea that faith was intertwined with the nation's identity. The word "liberty," meanwhile, harkened back to the American Revolution and the principles for which Jefferson himself had fought. By pairing Jefferson's portrait with these inscriptions, the coin served as a compact statement of American ideals: faith, freedom, and leadership. The year 1964 was especially important for coinage in the United States. The nation faced a massive shortage of coins, the result of a booming economy and increasing use of coin-operated machines. The mint responded by producing coins at record levels, and the Jefferson nickel was no exception. In 1964 alone, over 2.8 billion nickels were struck, the highest mintage for the denomination up to that time. The Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint both struck these coins, though the San Francisco Mint, which had ceased regular coin production in the 1950s, was not active in nickel production during this year. Coins from Denver were marked with a small D mint mark, while Philadelphia coins carried no mint mark. The composition of the 1964 nickel was the same as it had been since 1946, 75% copper and 25% nickel, a durable alloy that resisted wear and maintained its silvery appearance over time. During World War II, the nickel had briefly been struck in a different composition containing silver to save nickel for the war effort. But by 1946, the original alloy was restored, and it continued unchanged through 1964 and beyond. Each coin weighed 5 grams and measured 21.2 millimeters in diameter, with a plain edge. Collectors often note that 1964 was the final year in which nickels carried mint marks placed to the right of Monticello on the reverse. Beginning in 1968, mint marks were moved to the obverse, beneath the date. Thus, for many numismatists, the 1964 nickel represents the last of an era in terms of design placement. Though billions were made, certain varieties and errors from 1964 have become highly desirable. Double die varieties, in which the lettering appears doubled due to a mistake in the hubbing process, are among the most sought after. In addition, some coins show striking errors such as off-center strikes, die cracks, or planchet flaws, which appeal to specialists in error collecting. From a historical perspective, the 1964 Jefferson nickel is inseparable from the economic conditions of its time. The early 1960s saw a surge in consumer activity, with vending machines, parking meters, and telephone booths all demanding coins in great numbers. The shortage of coins became so severe that Congress passed legislation to increase mint production and even authorized the removal of mint marks from coins struck between 1965 and 1967 in order to discourage hoarding. The Jefferson nickel was a workhorse coin, produced in vast numbers to meet the needs of commerce. For many Americans, the nickel of 1964 was a daily companion, slipped into soda machines, bus fares, and countless small transactions. The artistry of Felix Schlag's design continued to be admired in 1964. Jefferson's profile was based on a bust by the sculptor Jean-Antoine Houdon, considered one of the most accurate likenesses of the president. Schlag's decision to place Jefferson facing left gave the coin a distinctive appearance, contrasting with the right-facing portraits of Washington and Lincoln on other denominations. Monticello on the reverse was rendered with simple lines, reflecting neoclassical style. For Jefferson, Monticello was not just a residence but a personal creation, embodying his ideals of balance, order, and harmony. For Americans who used the nickel, it became a symbol of Jefferson's lasting influence on the nation. In addition to its design and production, the 1964 nickel can be understood as part of a broader tradition of American coinage. Coins are more than monetary tools. They are miniature works of art and vehicles for national identity. The use of mottos, portraits, and landmarks conveys messages about what the nation values and remembers. By 1964, the Jefferson nickel had already been in circulation for over 25 years, making it familiar to several generations. Yet it still carried messages as relevant as ever: trust in God, devotion to liberty, and reverence for the nation's founders. Even today, collectors and historians look back at the 1964 nickel with interest. Its enormous mintage means that it is common in circulation, and uncirculated examples are easily obtainable. Yet the coin's connection to its era, its place in the story of American coinage, and its enduring design give it a significance beyond its monetary value. For those who study coins, the 1964 Jefferson nickel is a window into the past, a piece of history that can be held in one's hand. The 5-cent coin of the United States, known as the Jefferson nickel, is one of the most enduring pieces of American coinage. By 1972, it had been in circulation for more than 3 decades, carrying with it the image of Thomas Jefferson, the 3rd President of the United States, and bearing the powerful inscriptions, "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." For millions of Americans, the 1972 nickel was a daily companion, exchanged in shops, vending machines, transportation systems, and countless small transactions. Beyond its modest value, the coin represented continuity, history, and national identity at a time when the country itself was experiencing dramatic change. The Jefferson nickel had first entered circulation in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel. The decision to honor Jefferson on the coin was tied to his stature as the author of the Declaration of Independence and one of the central figures of the American founding era. The design, created by Felix Schlag, was selected after a competition among American artists. Schlag's obverse portrait of Jefferson, facing left, was paired with his depiction of Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia home, on the reverse. Together, these images created a coin that celebrated leadership, architecture, and the values of freedom and governance. Over the decades, the design became familiar to generations of Americans, and by 1972 it was an established part of the nation's circulating currency. The obverse of the 1972 Jefferson nickel bore the inscriptions, "In God We Trust" and "Liberty," alongside the date, These inscriptions were far more than decorative elements. "In God We Trust" had first appeared on United States coinage during the Civil War, a reflection of the nation's reliance on divine guidance during its most difficult trial. By 1956, the phrase had become the official national motto, and its presence on coins in 1972 emphasized the continuing importance of faith in American public life. The word liberty linked the coin directly to the Revolution and the ideals for which Jefferson himself had fought. Together, these inscriptions framed Jefferson's portrait as a statement of national identity, a republic grounded in freedom and faith. The reverse of the 1972 nickel carried Monticello, Jefferson's home, presented with neoclassical balance and symmetry. For Jefferson, Monticello was not simply a residence but a reflection of his architectural vision and Enlightenment ideals. To Americans using the coin in 1972, it symbolized continuity with the founding generation and the lasting influence of Jefferson's thought. Below Monticello appeared the words, "E pluribus unum," out of many, one. Another national motto underscoring unity amid diversity. In 1972, the United States Mint struck Jefferson Nickels at 3 different facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins from Philadelphia carried no mint mark, Denver coins were marked with a D, and San Francisco coins bore an S. The San Francisco Mint was primarily focused on producing proof coins for collectors, while Philadelphia and Denver struck billions of circulation pieces to meet public demand. The combined mintage of 1972 nickels reached extraordinary levels, reflecting the massive need for coins in daily commerce during the early 1970s. Each nickel struck in 1972 weighed 5 grams and was composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, a durable alloy that had been in use since 1946. This composition gave the coin its silvery appearance and resilience against wear. The diameter was 21.2 millimeters with a plain edge. These specifications remained consistent, reinforcing the stability of the denomination over time. The early 1970s were a complex period in American history. The nation was experiencing social, political, and economic challenges, from the Vietnam War to debates over civil rights and environmental issues. In 1972, Richard Nixon was re-elected as president, and the Watergate scandal was beginning to unfold, though it would not come fully into public view until later. At the same time, the economy was shifting, with inflation beginning to rise and the United States transitioning away from the Bretton Woods system of fixed exchange rates. In this environment, the Jefferson nickel remained a constant, a familiar coin that linked everyday transactions to the nation's larger story. The mintage of 1972 nickels was extremely high, with the Philadelphia and Denver mints each producing hundreds of millions of pieces. This abundance meant that the coin was readily available across the country, reinforcing its role as a staple of American commerce. The San Francisco proofs, though struck in smaller numbers, were carefully made with polished dies and planchets, producing coins of exceptional detail and brilliance. Collectors prized these proofs, seeing them as both artistic works and enduring keepsakes of the year. Varieties and errors from 1972 are of particular interest to numismatists. Double die varieties, where inscriptions or elements of the design appear doubled due to a hubbing error, are especially valued. In some cases, collectors have identified doubled lettering in Liberty or In God We Trust, making those coins rare and desirable. Other errors, such as off-center strikes, die cracks, or improperly prepared planchets, also attract specialist interest. These anomalies turn ordinary coins into unique pieces of minting history, often commanding values far higher than face value. From a cultural perspective, the Jefferson nickel of 1972 was both ordinary and extraordinary. It was ordinary in that it was used every day by millions of Americans, exchanged without a second thought for bus fares, candy, newspapers, and countless other goods. It was extraordinary in that it carried the image and words that linked the user to the nation's founding, to Jefferson's vision, and to the values of liberty, unity, and trust in God. The fact that billions were made does not diminish its importance. Rather, it underscores the way coins serve as shared cultural touchstones. Even today, collectors look back at the 1972 nickel as a product of its time. While not rare in circulation, high-grade examples, proof strikes, and recognized varieties have become sought after. Beyond their numismatic value, they offer a tangible connection to 1972, a year of both continuity and change in American life. Holding such a coin is to hold a fragment of history, a reminder of the enduring legacy of Jefferson and the principles inscribed upon the nation's money. The United States 5-cent coin, known as the Jefferson nickel, has stood for decades as a symbol of both stability and national heritage. By 1996, the coin had been in circulation for 58 years, carrying on the legacy of its introduction in 1938. For the American public, the 1996 nickel was more than a piece of metal. It was a connection to history, to the ideals of Thomas Jefferson, and to the national mottos inscribed upon its surface. Across millions of hands, in shops, schools, transit systems, and vending machines, the nickel continued to be exchanged as a small but essential unit of commerce. Its design, composition, and inscriptions made it a familiar yet meaningful artifact of daily life. On the obverse of the 1996 Jefferson nickel was a left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, designed originally by Felix Schlag. Schlag's design had won a nationwide competition in 1938 to replace the Buffalo nickel, and over the years it became one of the most recognizable American coins. Jefferson's profile was not an arbitrary image but was modeled on a celebrated bust of Jefferson created by French sculptor Jean-Antoine Houdon in the late 18th century. This likeness was widely regarded as the most faithful and dignified representation of Jefferson, capturing his Enlightenment intellect and his presidential stature. By 1996, this portrait had been in use for decades, but it retained its power as an image of leadership and statesmanship. Two inscriptions framed Jefferson's portrait: "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." These words were not mere ornamentation but were imbued with deep symbolic weight. "In God We Trust" had become the official motto of the United States in 1956, though its origins on coinage stretched back to the Civil War. Its placement on the 1996 nickel reaffirmed the enduring relationship between national identity and faith. To countless Americans, it represented a trust in divine providence and a unifying statement about the spiritual foundation of the nation. Liberty, meanwhile, connected directly to Jefferson's most famous contributions to American thought, including his authorship of the Declaration of Independence. The single word invoked the revolution, the sacrifices of the founders, and the continuing relevance of freedom in the modern era. Together, these inscriptions made the 1996 nickel a compact expression of America's ideals. On the reverse side was Monticello, Jefferson's home in Virginia. This neoclassical structure was not only Jefferson's personal residence but also a creation of his own architectural design. It represented Jefferson's fascination with classical ideals of symmetry, proportion, and order, as well as his commitment to learning and innovation. The depiction of Monticello on the nickel served as a reminder of Jefferson's multifaceted genius, not only as a statesman but also as an architect, philosopher, and man of culture. Beneath Monticello appeared the motto E pluribus unum, out of many, one, a statement of national unity. Also present were the denomination 5 cents and the name of the issuing nation, United States of America. By 1996, these elements had appeared on the coin for decades, but they continued to resonate with each new generation of users. The physical specifications of the 1996 Jefferson nickel were consistent with the standard established after World War II. Each coin weighed 5 grams and had a diameter of 21.2 millimeters. The composition was 75% copper and 25% nickel, a durable alloy chosen for its resistance to wear and for its silvery appearance. The edge of the coin was plain rather than reeded, distinguishing it from dimes and quarters. These specifications had remained unchanged for many years, and by 1996 the nickel's feel, weight, and look were instantly recognizable to anyone who handled it. In 1996, the United States Mint produced Jefferson nickels at its 3 primary facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins struck at Philadelphia carried no mint mark, those from Denver bore a D, and those from San Francisco carried an S. The Philadelphia and Denver mints produced the circulating nickels used in daily transactions, while San Francisco specialized in proof coins for collectors. Proof nickels were created using specially prepared dies and polished planchets, resulting in coins of exceptional clarity and mirror-like surfaces. These proofs were sold as part of annual proof sets, making them prized by numismatists who sought the highest quality strikes of each year. The total mintage of Jefferson Nickels in 1996 was in the hundreds of millions, ensuring ample supply for circulation. The large numbers meant that the coin was readily available throughout the United States, continuing its role as one of the workhorse denominations of the economy. The nickel was essential for vending machines, payphones, laundromats, and countless other small transactions that defined daily commerce. Even though inflation had eroded the purchasing power of 5 cents compared to earlier decades, the coin remained important in practical terms. It also carried psychological weight, as people continued to view the nickel as a meaningful unit of value within the monetary system. Numismatically, the 1996 nickel is common in circulated grades, but certain variations and minting anomalies have drawn the interest of collectors. Doubled die varieties, in which elements such as liberty or in God we trust appear doubled due to errors in the die creation process, are especially sought after. Coins struck slightly off-center with die cracks or with planchet flaws also fall into the category of error coins that attract premium value. High-grade uncirculated examples, particularly those graded MS66 or higher, are also valued because they are scarcer in pristine condition despite the large mintage. Proof nickels from San Francisco, with their sharp strikes and mirrored fields, add another layer of collectible interest for those assembling complete yearly sets. The year 1996 itself provides important context for understanding the nickel of that time. The United States was in a period of relative economic strength, with growth fueled by technological innovation and the early years of the digital revolution. Bill Clinton was serving his first term as president, and the nation was experiencing debates over globalization, trade, and domestic policy. Culturally, the mid-1990s were a dynamic era, with developments in music, film, and technology reshaping society. Against this backdrop, the nickel remained unchanged, offering a sense of continuity amid rapid transformation. In a time when much was new and evolving, the coin's familiar design tied Americans to their past. The Jefferson nickel of 1996 also fit into the broader story of American coinage. Coins are not simply instruments of exchange, but are symbols of identity, values, and history. By featuring Jefferson, Monticello, and the mottos of the United States, the 1996 nickel acted as a daily reminder of the nation's founding ideals. Even though it was worth only 5 cents, it carried messages that were priceless. Its durability as a design reflected not just artistic preference but also the endurance of the values it symbolized. For collectors today, the 1996 Jefferson nickel may not be rare, but it holds significance as part of the long series of Jefferson nickels. Collectors assembling complete date and mint mark sets include the 1996 issue, noting differences between Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco strikes. In high grades or with recognized varieties, the coin becomes more than common currency. It transforms into a collectible piece of American history. Proof examples, preserved in pristine condition, show the design at its sharpest, allowing Jefferson's profile and Monticello's architecture to be appreciated in detail. Thus, the 1996 5-cent coin stands at the intersection of commerce, history, and symbolism. It may have been spent countless times in ordinary transactions, but each coin carried with it echoes of Jefferson's vision, the nation's mottos, and the craftsmanship of the United States Mint. To hold one is to connect not only with the year 1996 but with the larger story of America's identity and the enduring legacy of liberty and trust in God.